Hello YouTube, Devin here. I got a nice helmet for you here. It's a one that's pretty rare in the collector's market, not because they're not out there, but because they're very, very hard to get out of their home country. Now, if you couldn't tell by this camouflage pattern on this helmet, this is a CG634, which is a Canadian helmet. So, and this is probably going to be my first test subject for the long movies where I'm going to go into cover pretty much every detail, and they're probably going to be half-hour to an hour long videos. So I'm going to try to keep them around 45 minutes for the most part when I do them. So, but they could be anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour depending on how much information I could find on them. This is going to be the short version of the CG634, so the brief overview for the people that don't want to watch the super long one. So I'll cover kind of the generals of this helmet in this video. So well, this is a very unique helmet. As you can see, it's got kind of a unique shape on it. So we'll give it a once around. It's got a really, really, really well-designed cover. This is probably my favorite helmet ever. Like, if I had to go into battle today, this is probably what I would take. Even though there's ones that offer more protection and stuff out there, this has just everything I'm looking for in a helmet. So, the CG634 has kind of a very, very rocky history, but we're going to briefly get over it. So, in the 1990s, the Canadians were looking for a new helmet to replace the M1s that they had in stock, and they tested a bunch of different helmets from England and France and America and Israel, and there's a bunch of them, and I'll get into those in the movie and stuff like that. But they tested a bunch of helmets, and they really took a bunch of the best features from them to make this. But before they decided to make this, they had a helmet in here called the Bar Day helmet. And what it was pretty much this exact shape. And it came in two versions. There was one that had like kind of a hockey pad liner, like a hockey helmet, if any of you have played hockey. What it is, it's like a whole bunch of little trapezoidal pads in a flexible piece of foam that would go over this. And it was a pretty stable helmet, but it tended to get too warm, and the pads tended to get too dirty, and they would melt and stuff in combat conditions. So they went to like a Pazgat style liner in them, and then they realized that just wasn't working, but they really wanted something locally produced. So they came up with this design then, with every feature that they wanted, and for the most part it was based off the French F2 helmet, which you can see in one of my previous videos. You'll see similarities between that if you did watch the video between that helmet and this helmet. But it's made out of the same materials as the French F2 and everything like that. And it was actually made of a subsection of the company that made the F2, which is Galley, CGF Galley of Canada, made all of the early versions of this helmet. And this is a late version, and I'll explain the difference between the two when we get into it here. But first we're going to go over some of the features of the helmet cover. Now, the helmet cover is very, very awkward. It's awkwardly shaped. As you can see, the ears here have their own special piece of stitching. They have goggle retention loops sewn in, so you would have to like take your goggle strap apart from your goggles and route them through here to utilize those. I personally don't, because sometimes I like to run it without the goggles. This kind of bulge back here is there's an extra piece of fabric, like a sun and windshield, that is held in place by a little piece of elastic under here. So there's a bunch of, I'll lift it up here so you can see it. See how there's like a bunch of extra fabric under there you could fold down as like a sun shield, which is a very useful feature. It's got a US cat-eye band on it. These are what the Canadians use as their standard goggles. Revision bullet ant goggles. They have a big, huge conglomeration too. Back before they actually standardized combat goggles, they used US ones or old like Desert Storm era sun, dust, and wind goggles, but these are their new standard goggles, the Revision Bullet Ants. I might do a video on those themselves later. This is how I like to run it though. I keep my goggles on the right side because that's I'm right eye dominant and right hand dominant, so these aren't as bulky as the flashlight, so when I lean my head this way to shoulder my rifle, the goggles are a lot lower profile than usually all the attachments I have hanging off the left side, and you'll see that on a lot of my helmets. So we'll get into the liner now, and here's the liner, and this liner is a very, very comfortable liner. It's very reminiscent of the F2, as you can see. with some subtle differences. All right, whereas the F2 had all of the pads like this. See these foam pads here, glued to the back of the suspension. They're only around the sweatband in the CG634. They're not on the back of the crown pad, which is just a piece of fabric with leather over it, or around the little arms. So these are just fabric. They went to a more like US and British approach, where the impact liner, which is this kind of styrofoam piece, is a separate piece from the suspension system. So that makes this a very, very breathable helmet, and a very, very comfortable helmet at that too. So they use this kind of green leather on the chin strap. It's pretty nice. It's padded, so the hardware doesn't get into your face. It's adjustable by these plastic slider buckles, kind of like an M1. They're held in with tension. They don't have like notches. They're not slider buckles. You would lift up this lever and you could slide it back and forth, and then you would close it to put tension on it so that it doesn't move around, which is a very nice feature. It is a triple mounted helmet, so it has 3-point suspension. So here's the back where it connects, and it's just held in with 3 screws. There's 3 screws on the outside of this helmet. This helmet's pretty bland on the outside, so I didn't take a lot of it off. It's pretty much the same size as pretty much an ACH, or like the 6B47 video I did, where there's a little lip bill on the front, but other than that, it's pretty much the same shape as an ACH. So I didn't want to take the cover off if I'm just going to reference those two. You've seen those two on my channel before, all of you that have watched. But the cool thing about the helmet cover, getting back to that, is that it's not actually held on with any like direct attachment points. It's not held in with screws. It's not held in by the chin strap. It's held in by these little plastic bands. There's 2 on each side on the ears. There's the other one right there. These 2 little plastic strips, and they're about 4 inches long, and they just slide underneath the styrofoam back here, this black styrofoam, to hold it in place. And it has kind of a plastic piece up there in the front to hook around the bill. And that's it. That's all that's holding the helmet cover on, is those 4 little plastic clips and that kind of plastic around the bill there that you tuck under the suspension. It's the only thing holding this helmet cover onto the helmet. So, but all in all, I really like this helmet. It's probably my favorite helmet. They're extremely rare. The chin strap's real easy. It's covered in a real easy to maintain. I like this because you don't need to replace anything on this helmet till literally anything goes wrong. Whereas like the ACH pads, you have to change every 6 months. So I would rather take one of these over the ACH any day. These are made now by a U.S. company. MSA bought out CGF Gallet in somewhere in the mid-2000s. So as you can see, there's the MSA logo right underneath where the chin buckle would go. This is plastic. It has a double lock chin strap here where you push these both forward. It's very, very secure chin strap. It's not like the push button ones like on the US or the Germans and stuff like that you can find. MSA made all of the later versions of these helmets, and the later versions are Kevlar. They're all in this kind of what's called Canadian average green or Canadian mass green, which is pretty much a lighter olive drab. And the original ones were Spectra, just like so they're Spectra fiber, not Kevlar or Aramid. They're Spectra fiber, which was developed by Honeywell. And the early ones you could tell apart from the late ones is when you take the cover off, they'll have a black rubber rim, whereas the later ones will have a green kind of plastic rim. This one has the green rim because it's a later one made by MSA. But all the ones made by CGF Gallet will have a black rim around them. And they usually have a big silver sticker right about here in the ear. So that'll say Gallet on them. But that'll pretty much wrap up this helmet. There's not a lot to it that you haven't seen before. I don't want to go too in depth in this so I don't repeat myself with a ton of so I don't get this video too busy when I'm going to be doing a video on it in like a really, really long video that covers everything about it, what influenced it and stuff like that. I don't want to get too many helmets on the screen. So we'll pretty much leave this video here. Hopefully you guys like this video, and if you're new to the channel, subscribe. If you have any questions on this helmet, I would very much be happy to answer them for you. And I look forward to seeing you guys in some of my next videos. And I will talk to you later. Bye.